Welcome to another excellent video from your blog, My World Andino, my cyber family. I have news. I've already decided to change our blog's name to Weekly News Cloud. I hope your continued support for our blog will reach more viewers and our cyber family to grow. The departure of Chinese companies will considerably impact the West market. Two of these companies are oil companies. It should also be mentioned that these economic problems between China and the US are only going to increase. In 2020, the US Congress passed a law that directly affected Chinese companies on the New York exchange. The economic power of the United States in the world means that these measures have a powerful effect. The Chinese companies have followed all the rules asked by the US markets. It would appear that the new regulations have gone too far. 5 different Chinese companies have decided to exit the Wall Street financial market. The 5 companies sent individual letters indicating the new aggressive rules and the listing costs are the reasons for the withdrawal. They are withdrawing. Experts say the added cost and new rules will damage how global investors see the financial market order in New York stocks. Could this mean the end of the US dollar hegemony and interference? Will there be a boomerang effect as with the sanctions imposed on Russia? We all know that they wanted to block Russia from the SWIFT banks. Russia, with the help of China, found a way to continue trading, buying without the SWIFT bank system. All 5 companies have decided to end their listing on Wall Street in early September, a week from now, to sanction Russia with no buying energy from them. Russia found buyers: India, Pakistan, China, and other countries, other European countries. Right now, the ruble is on demand because why? Russia said, if you want to buy energy from me, buy it in rubles. That's the idea. That's the idea. Using your own currency. When you're exchanging hundreds and thousands of millions, your own currency, your currency strengthens. Right now we have the SWIFT bank. We always need to buy the US dollars to use the SWIFT bank's system. That is why the US is so strong. It's stronger than any other economy. Let's keep going. All 5 companies have decided to end their listing on Wall Street in early September. The news has governments worldwide starting to make purchases using their own currency. Even the Saudi Arabia nation has begun to sell and purchase with China using local currency. When Saudi Arabia began to sell to the world energy, petroleum, in US dollars only, that's when the US rose as high as eagle. If Saudi Arabia begins to sell its petroleum around the world using local currency, the US dollar will weaken. I'm not saying that the US dollar will disappear, but they will lose a lot of power or strength. The Chinese foreign minister N.Y.E. stated the U.S. tradition to create problems that do not exist and use it to its advantage. A practice of provoking and stirring up wars. Perfect example is Venezuela. They call Maduro a dictator. Supported Juan Guaido, a person who never enlisted himself for an election as a president. To the day they continue to support him. But when they needed energy or gas from Venezuela, they're like, hey, Maduro, my friend, how's it going? Guaidó was put to the side because Maduro did not want to sell gas to them and betray their best friends, Russia. They did something, and I will talk about that in the next video. But for now, let's go back to what we're talking about. But see, that's just an example of stirring problems and doing propaganda to affect the economy of a nation. And because of the SWIFT, because everybody needs to use the SWIFT bank system, either you support that idea or you get kicked out of the SWIFT bank system. And that's when the country runs into a lot of problems because they can't purchase, they can't pay debt, nothing. This is the reason why it's important for another bank system. Because I understand if a government, it's not respecting its people. Like, for example, what happened in Bolivia. N.Y.E and the militants were abusing of the natives, of the First Nation people. The U.S. didn't say anything then. Actually supported that government, although she was taking lives away and abusing of the population. I would understood if the US or NATO would have said, you can't use the system to transfer money. Okay, for Janine Añez to use the SWIFT system to take money from Bolivia, deposit it maybe in Spain. I think you get my point. So the US has been practicing a double standard. Its government claims to respect the one China principle. This is on paper, but in action provokes China by selling Taiwan's military weapons without Beijing's approval. Pelosi visit to Taiwan is a perfect example of the U.S. provoking and trying to stir up problems in foreign regions. Let me explain why the sanctions and the U.S.-Taiwan military training in Taiwan Strait is meant to slow down China's economy, influence in Asia and around the planet, plus the perfect intimidation. An evident competition has begun, which is technological and economic. The competition is very apparent, which leads to political actions. The global market's instability since 2008 seems to open room for bloc markets. The BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, countries were the first to speak of the inequality in the stock market and technological markets since 2019. China and countries such as Brazil, India, and Argentina have been discussing options for commercializing using their own currencies. Nations worldwide have started to wonder why they deal in US dollars when they aren't trading the US. Governments worldwide are now admitting to themselves how the US uses the SWIFT bank system as a weapon against governments who may disagree with a particular geopolitical policy. We can also take into consideration the economic maneuvers Trump did against Huawei, detaining Huawei's president with the excuse of having breached rules. That was when additional sanctions were imposed against Chinese technology companies. Measures were set to stop the Chinese advance in 5G. Most Europe wanted to be 5G, but then the US said, did you forget that you need to use my SWIFT bank? And they all, no, we're not gonna use it. It's evil. It's killing birds, burning trees. I don't know that it's not true, but it sounds to me like, Iraq has nuclear weapons, lethal weapons. We have to get in there. China seeks to strengthen innovation for all of Asia. Countries have also taken notice of what happened to Russia. Russia's interference in Ukraine caused them to be blocked from using the SWIFT bank system. Nations that disagree with sanctions against Russia would like to see the start of a new chain of financial banks. They want to dislink themselves from the SWIFT bank power over them. I've already told you, my friends, that the planet will be divided into two blocks, West, and the other block will consist of countries that prefer to list their economy in a bilateral market where everybody gets to win. You win, the other country wins, and it's fair. It's fair trading. It has nothing to do with I'm a stronger country economically, or I'm a stronger country militarily. So if you want to deal with me, you want to make purchases from me, you're going to have to jump these hurdles, pay higher costs before you can receive the goods. Economic experts explain how the United States had to subsidize markets such as soybean during the Trump presidency in the beginning of the economic war. Well, China decided to expand its economic ties with other countries. So whatever the West did not want to buy from China, China decided to sell it to other countries, while the US wanted money to give to its farmers. That makes experts believe is the reason China will come out more stable, as well as the entire Asian financial trading market. Let's remember, 5,000 millions are living in New York stock, going to Shanghai or to Hong Kong. Message to prospective investors from the stock market is that they want to protect investors, that they only seek transparency from the companies that are in listing to avoid speculations and uncertainty in the markets. Speculations is, from my point of view, is how millionaires make additional millions. I think we all know about the Panama Papers, the Canary banks where rich people hide their money. So the message from the stock market is that these companies are withdrawing because they don't want to be transparent. The way I see it is that China has come a long way with the technology and innovation. The information that the US is asking, it cannot be public yet. It's the same idea why the BRICS bloc complains. There are companies that could be ready or are ready to enlist in the stock market, in the New York stock market, but are asking these companies to pay higher prices. Disclose important information on how the company is structured or how the product is created. Well, that's totally unfair. Countries in the G7 that they have a lot more money than the developing nations could build a factory and start making that same product at a lower cost. So if you have been paying attention to how the world's economy develops, you may have noticed that everything nowadays is made in Asia. Industries in North America want to charge as much as possible for their gadgets, and employees want to earn a fair percentage of the final cost of the device they help make. This is why most manufacturers ended up in Asia, some in Mexico and some in India, right? China learned to build the devices and technology we need in our present lives. They have even improved on that technology. Example, 5G. Now the US wants or expects China to return the favor. What do I mean by that? Expect China to tell them the secret of how they improve gadgets. And then China says, well, no, we're not going to do that. And then that's when Trump says, we are nice and now people are taking advantage of us. Trump, The reality of the matter is that what the U.S. wanted was using the Chinese labor market to produce as much products as possible, because of course the U.S. is a country where people buy and buy and buy even when they don't need it. They buy it because it's cute. They buy items because they're ugly, or just to have them. When China says, no, we're not going to do that, we're not returning any favor, we work hard, we created our own companies, we're not planning on, we pay our dues now, so we don't need to return the favor by telling you how our components work. And that is the main reason why these new regulations in the stock market are added. It's turning off many investors. In China that hasn't appreciated the way they have been treated by the US, by Britain, by Japan. Before China became the country of the world, they were agricultures, but simple people, because they lived simple lives, were forced to come to cities where they didn't know anyone, and eventually struggle to create their own business, to create their own technological business, and now they are the factory of the world, right? That's the truth. The U.S. wants secrets, how these companies work, how these products work. The departure of these large Chinese companies will affect the Western market. Cyber family, to all those who are still here at this moment. Don't forget to help someone in your community, as you may be the only one who does. Now,